What's up, Coach B here. This is the very first video that I'm going to make that's going to be part of this Chalk Talk series, in which basically I'm going to explain topics pertaining to the markets, options, trading strategies, technical analysis, day trading, among other things. If you have any suggestions or, want to throw out some ideas for future topics of anything you'd like me to cover, leave a comment below. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already done so to help this channel's growth. All right. So just trying to think of like what would be the best topic to start with. And it's came up before in my live stream, and I've seen it come up in the media recently, and kind of over the last couple of months with all the popularity that short squeezes and short selling has had. So I thought naked short selling would be a great first topic to try to explain. And I'm going to try to simplify this as much as possible. If there's anything that I kind of gloss over or don't cover, it's because I really want to get down to the bare basics of this. Okay. So before we even get started, one, I'm going to assume that everybody understands how buying and selling a stock works, right? So if I go out and buy one share of a stock, let's say the stock's trading for $10. Okay. So now I've purchased it. I own that share for $10. And the stock goes up to $12. Okay, so at that time, at any time really, but at that time, I decide, you know what, I want to sell this stock and take a profit. Well, I profited $2, right? Simple enough. If I buy that stock for $10 and it drops down to $9, all right, I lost a buck. I sell if I want, cover my position, but basically I lost $1 in between. I bought it for 10, it went down to 9, I closed it out. Now I'm down $1. Okay, so that's how buying a stock works. Now, when you short a stock, it's basically the exact opposite. With one key difference is that there's unlimited risk, right? So if you buy a stock at $10, the most amount of money you could lose is $10, right? So if that stock goes all the way down to zero, I put $10 in, I could no longer take anything out. I lost $10, done. Um, if you short a stock, because it works in the opposite way and there really is no ceiling on how high a stock can go, you have unlimited risk. So when you short a stock, let's say I short the stock at $10, that means I want it to go down. Stock drops down to $9, I make a buck. Okay. Now, if I short that stock at 10 and the stock goes up to $15, I just lost $5. Okay, and the way that works, which again I'll break down right now, is basically you're borrowing something. Okay, so because I know I've had people even ask me, well, like, how do you sell something you don't own? Well, you're borrowing it. So you go over to a broker or a lender, you take that share. Hey, I want to short this stock. I'm taking this share at $10. I'm borrowing it from you. Okay, so now I owe them a stock. I don't owe them $10. I owe them the stock. But now I take that stock and I sell it into the market. Someone on the other end buys it from me. Okay, so now I wait. Stock drops down $1 to $9. Maybe I wait longer, wait till it goes to $8. Now I'm going to cover or buy it back. So I go in, I buy that stock back from someone else on the market, but now I have a stock back in my possession, right? I sold it for 10, put $10 in my pocket, and now I just went and bought it back for 8. Okay, so I have $2 left over. That $2 is mine. I keep the $2. I go give the share back to the broker I borrowed it from. That's it. That's how shorting works. Now on the flip side, again, let's say I borrowed it for 10. I owe that broker one share. I sell it into the market. Someone gives me $10. Okay. So now I'm holding on to $10 and I need to go buy that share back, and all of a sudden the stock goes up, let's say to 13. And I don't want to lose any more money. So now, yeah, I got that $10 from when I sold it, but I'm gonna have to take $3 out of my pocket and go buy that stock for 13 now. So now I lost $3 and I still have to go give that share back to the broker. So that's how shorting works in its simplest terms, right? You're borrowing and you're selling it into the market. You're trying, ultimately what you want to happen is to buy that share back at a cheaper price and go return it and keep the difference. Okay, so now when we, and by we I mean retail, when we want to short a stock, it's a lot easier for us in the sense that we don't actually have to go out and locate a broker. So regardless of who you're trading through, if you're trading through Webull, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Robinhood, whatever, whoever your broker may be, they have it set up for you already where you can go in and you could short a stock. Basically, if you don't own any of the stock and you hit the sell button to sell that one share at $10, you've now created a short position. You've essentially borrowed a share from your broker, and at some point you're going to have to go in and buy it back. Okay, whatever the net difference is what you made or lost. So exactly like how I just explained. But that's because we retail, we're trading on platforms through brokers, and our brokers have kind of a basket of shares that they have available for us to short with if we wanted to. Okay, now the difference is hedge funds and institutions, right? The bigger players in this thing, they don't trade through broker platforms. They have their own platforms. And the reason they do it is because they want to have access to many brokers, and they want to have access to different exchanges and, have a little bit more control. So when they want to sell a stock or short a stock, I should say, they could do it. They go onto their platform, they sell it in there. Now, they're supposed to locate those shares ahead of time, or at least know that they can locate them. So, if I'm a hedge fund or, whatever, and I want to go in and I want to short a stock, I can go in there and hit the sell button, sell 10,000 shares and just sell them straight into the market, as long as I, have those shares borrowed from somebody. So I went over to this broker and borrowed 5,000, and I went over to this broker and borrowed another 5,000. Now I'm sitting on 10,000 shares, and I could short them into the market at my disposal. That's how it works for them. And this all works under the understanding that they have already located these shares to borrow, that there were shares out there available for them to borrow. But that's not always the case, right? So if they really want to drive a stock down and they can't locate enough shares, let's just say they want to short 10,000 shares into the market and they can only locate 2,000. Well, what they should do is just short 2,000 shares, right? But sometimes these guys get a little greedy and they'll decide, you know what, I'm just going to short 10,000 anyways. Well, they only borrowed 2,000. So now essentially what they're doing is they're hitting that sell button, that short button in their platform, and they've just created 8,000 counterfeit shares or naked short positions. Okay. And I'll slow down and walk you through how this works. But basically, because they're allowed to sell shares into the market that they don't physically own, that they haven't borrowed from anybody yet, when they sell something into the market, there's always a buyer on the other end, right? The same thing goes if you short a stock. If you borrow a stock from somewhere, you short it into the market, someone on the other end is buying that stock from you. So we're not actually creating shares, we're borrowing them and selling them in. But when they sell shares that don't exist and someone else buys them, all of a sudden that creates counterfeit shares, and that dilutes the stock, right? Because now let's say the float, the number of shares that are available on a certain stock is, let's say, 1 million. Okay, if everything was done correctly in a perfect world without naked shorting, and all these shares were borrowed in the right manner and then shorted into the market, everything should be fine. I borrowed 10,000 shares, I sold them into the market. There's still only 1 million shares out there. I still owe 10,000 shares to that broker, but at the same time, I just have to go in and buy them, right? Well, when these guys do naked shorting and they're creating these counterfeit shares, well, now what just happened in my scenario? Well, we started with 1 million. I only borrowed 2,000, but I sold 10,000 into the market. So 8,000 of those are counterfeit. So now all of a sudden we have 1 million and 8,000 shares floating around in existence. And then now start doubling and tripling and do this time over time again as you're trying to drive a stock price down, and you're just putting these shares that don't exist. You can get to the point where all of a sudden, there was only supposed to be 1 million shares available, and now maybe there's 2 million out there. And there's 2 million people on the other side that actually own these shares. It could be retail, it could be other institutions, whoever went in there and bought up the other side of this transaction. They all think they own real shares of a stock, but in actuality, some of the shares floating around out there are counterfeit. And that's why naked short selling is illegal, okay? Because it allows them to manipulate a price down. It gives them ultimately unlimited firepower, where they could just keep pressing the sell button and pressing the sell button and pressing the sell button. Yeah, eventually they're supposed to cover these short positions. But I think in their minds, they just figure, well, we'll just drive the price lower, 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 and eventually we'll go in there and buy those positions back. So in a nutshell, that is what naked shorting is. And that's why it's illegal, is because it's diluting a float, it's creating counterfeit shares, it's allowing manipulation tactics to take place, which shouldn't. I mean, in a perfect world, yeah, shorting can exist, but if you can't find shares to borrow, then you can't short the stock. It should be that simple. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. And there's a lot more to this. I know one of the follow-up questions that I'm going to get into later is what causes them to, cover the stock. If you're creating fake shares, why do you have to cover it? Well, simply put, and I'll get into this in another video, basically about failure to delivers. But at the end of the day, if you're selling those shares into the market, you need to go deliver those shares because someone on the other side bought them, right? But we'll get into that on another day. I hope that was simple enough to understand, as my whole purpose of this was to kind of explain how this stuff works. If it wasn't, leave me a comment and let me know. And again, if you have any other questions or you want me to make a video about something else, I love doing it. So by all means, leave a comment below and I'll absolutely get after it. Have a nice night.